A memorable era in Northwest sports history came to a close with the passing of Eugene Xarin in 2014. A private man by nature, Xarin was destined for a run in the limelight as the breeder, owner, and trainer of Washington thoroughbred icon Trooper 7. Xarin was unique among Washington horsemen, and Trooper 7 unique among superstar racehorses. As a youngster in Minnesota, Xarin worked on a farm and developed a lifelong interest in and love of horses. He met wife Jean in England after World War II and eventually settled in the Northwest. Daughter Kimberly soon arrived.
When we were young, we lived in Federal Way in Twin Lakes, and my father would go out to the racetrack. He was friends with I believe Ron Crockett and a few other engineers that were into racing, and my dad just became enthralled with horses.
Xarin's master's degree in engineering secured him employment at Boeing and later a career at St. Regis Paper in Tacoma. Mrs. Xarin had no objections to her husband's vision of a future with horses.
She was from Norwich, England, very high energy, very smart. She loved the horses too. They used to go to Newmarket when she was young, and her dad owned a booking parlor in England.
In the 1960s, the Xarin family moved from Federal Way to a 51-acre farm in Wana, outside of Tacoma. Beautiful property with rolling terrain, water, and hundreds of majestic evergreens. It earned its name of Whispering Firs.
My mom and him went and they bought Miss Hollanda, and that's all I know is that we bought the farm and we moved out here, and then we just started to breed, and Miss Hollanda was the first mare that my dad had.
Eugene Xarin made the time to become a horseman, reading and observing to gain knowledge. A dedicated routine soon began.
He would get up about 4 o'clock and he would go to the racetrack. From the racetrack, he would go to work. I think he was like number 2 or 3 man at St. Regis down in Tacoma. And he would work there all day. Then after work, most of the time, and I believe religiously, he would go back to the racetrack, feed the horses, make sure everything was good, and then he would come home late at night. And he did that every day, 7 days a week for as long as I could remember.
Miss Hollanda's first 3 foals were winners. One of them was the ultra-fast Bravo 7, a Longacre Sprint Stakes winner. With all those firs on the property, it's a maple tree that's the most famous. Miss Hollanda's 1976 foal, a colt by table run, was born on a rainy April 8th.
I was in junior high school. I went to the dentist. My mother and I got home from the dentist, and he was out in the pasture with his mom, up in the top pasture under a tree. We went over, we put an umbrella under him, covered him up, called my father. Nobody was around. He just came out naturally, and everything was perfect. Miss Hollanda was there, and that was the beginning.
He would be known as Trooper 7, continuing the Xarin trend in naming horses.
He was very intelligent, and he learned very well, and he was smart. And he was extremely friendly, and he would actually give, when you were playing with him or something, he would want you to pull his tongue. And so he was just a really cool horse. There wasn't a mean bone in his body. He lived with a pony and a Great Dane and myself, and we just became friends. I had no clue he was that good, you know. My dad was a trainer, and he broke Trooper out on the farm, and my mother would feed him and take care of the horses. She was excellent with the horses. Everything was meticulously done, and everything was perfect.
At age 2, Trooper 7 won a maiden special weight race at Longacres in the fall. Xarin was confident in the colt's future and sought a top jockey for the 3-year-old campaign. When the 1979 season began, Gary Bays was a well-established name from one of Washington's top racing clans. At age 23, he already had 3 Longacres riding titles and was up to number 8 on the list of career stakes wins.
When I first was made aware of Trooper 7 was in his 3-year-old year. I didn't know this trainer, Eugene Xarin, that well. He caught me one morning on the backstretch of Longacres and said that he had a colt. He'd like me to work, and we had to work him really early because he had a day job. He was still working in Gig Harbor at the time. And so I said, sure, no problem. I didn't know Gene at all, so of course in the back of your mind, okay, what have I got myself into here? But I showed up the next morning, he let out Trooper, I got on him, went out the track and worked him, and I knew at that point that he was something special.
Bays' first ride didn't go well. Trooper bolted the turn in a May allowance. They quickly, however, came back to team up with a sprint victory. Trooper's first stakes win came a few weeks later in the Seattle Slough Handicap.
It is Trooper 7, King's Memory, J.W. Blade, Mariah Flyer, and Kilty. Trooper 7 and Mariah Flyer, J.W. Blade, and Kilty. It is all Trooper 7.
The 1 minute, 34 2/5 time at a mile was the best ever at Long Acres for a 3-year-old. Bays had secured another promising mount and got to know Xarin better every day.
Gene was always a quiet man. He was a humble man, but he was, I think I've told you this before, he was a student of the game. He never stopped studying. He loved horse racing. He'd ask questions of jockeys. He'd ask questions of trainers. He never stopped trying to educate himself with horses and horse racing. When you did have bad racing luck some days, which always happens to all of us, he would never complain, never say anything bad. And he was just a great trainer and a great man to ride for.
The colt also won the Bellevue Handicap, and after a runner-up among 14 in a muddy Long Acres Derby, Trooper 7 was named the state's top 3-year-old. Expectations were high for 1980, why not? John White was a big fan of Sire Table Run and became a member of the growing legion of Trooper 7 fans.
I fondly recall visiting with Gene Xarin at his barn one rainy morning at Long Acres in May 1980. I was working for the racing form at that time. Trooper was a rising Northwest star, and it was just so cool to be talking with his trainer on that rainy morning at Long Acres. But I especially remember Xarin telling me that morning that every move he would be making with Trooper that year was with the Long Acres Mile in mind.
Jumping into the older horse division can be problematic, but Xarin, Bays, and Trooper 7 teamed up for 2 stakes wins and 2 stakes placings, leading up to the 1980 Governor's Handicap.
In that race that he actually tied the world record kind of came as a shock because it was just before the mile. It was a race before the mile, I believe, that year, and his previous race we thought he might be tailing off a bit. So we weren't expecting that world record performance in the Governor's that year.
Down the lane to the 16th, that's Trooper 7. Drawn out and J.W. Blade driving on the outside. Trooper 7.
Trooper 7 tied the world record of 1 minute, 13 4/5 seconds for 6.5 furlongs. Now a proven older horse, he earned the second high weight of 123 pounds for the Long Acres Mile. A Washington bred hadn't won the race since 1972.
There is a new leader. He's that Trooper 7 on the lead by 1. Then it is Murder Blair, Island Sultan on the outside and Tilt the Balance. Trooper 7, Island Sultan, Murder Blair and Tilt the Balance. It is Trooper 7.
What a victory! Trooper 7 by 3 lengths. He'd won the Northwest's biggest race in front of a new record crowd of over 20,000. Xarin fed his star the celebratory can of beer in the winner's circle. Trooper was Washington's 1980 Horse of the Year and Miss Hollanda Broodmare of the Year. Gary Bays won his first Long Acres Mile. Trooper's earnings of $145,000 were a state record for one meeting, and with breeder and owner bonuses, it was a bonanza for the Xarin operation. Those who followed Washington racing over the years associate 1981 with Trooper 7.
He was just perfect to ride that last year. He'd stand in the gate, he'd look down the track, he wouldn't wiggle an ear. He'd always brake good. When a hole opened up, you just push the button and he'd get through it quick. He was just so simple to ride.
When Trooper raced, it was a big day for the family. While Mr. Xarin did his job in the stable area, Mrs. Xarin worked in the Long Acres Mutual Department, and Kim had a job in the Paddock Club.
I worked at the track through college, and I went to school in Southern California, so I go to Southern California, and then I come back in the summer. And my mom was in the money room, and she was always back there, but she had a bunch of friends back there. They used to get all excited and dressed up and, have fun with Trooper. And I would be there, and then, he would win, and I would probably be, everybody knew I'd be gone, so after that I usually left and was gone, for the day or two. But it was exciting.
As August 1981 approached, Trooper 7 was a Washington hero. He had climbed from humble beginnings to status as a superior racehorse with personality, charisma, and world record speed. He had a name that rolled off the tongue, was adored by fans, and came through under pressure. Top local horses just couldn't beat him. He took the governor's handicap to go 4 for 4 at the meeting.
But look out, here he comes, and that is Trooper 7. Trooper 7 has command. Pappy is second in Renton Junction. The Trooper won the lead. Trooper 7 by 2, and Pappy, it's that horse, Trooper 7.
No horse had ever won 2 consecutive Long Acres miles, and none had previously earned $100,000 in one Washington race. It was to be a tough field with 6 horses shipping in. To ride against Trooper and Bays, 3 Hall of Fame greats of the game came to town: Bill Shoemaker, Lafitte Pinkai Jr., and Sandy Hawley. Trooper drew post number 3 and would carry 126 pounds. The record-breaking crowd believed and had no problem making him the 9-5 post-time favorite.
With a quarter mile to home, it is Mr. Prime Minister on the lead by a neck, but Trooper 7 is moving up to take command. They're coming to the 8th pole. It is Trooper 7 on the lead by 2. Reb's Golden Ale is second. Mr. Prime Minister, Lodo Canada, and Summertime Guy. It is that Trooper 7 on the lead. Reb's Golden Ale is second. They will not catch him. He's Trooper 7.
Among the media that covered that mile, many in reporting used a phrase similar to, "The grandstand shook during the stretch run." That wasn't just poetic license. Those riders and broadcasters felt the shaking themselves with the bulk of the 25,000 fans rooting wildly for their local champion. Trooper 7 was retired after the mile in style. He was the first horse to win back-to-back Long Acres miles. He was undefeated for the year, 5 for 5. He owned a world record at 6.5 furlongs, and he'd become the state's all-time richest thoroughbred.
Several years ago, I wrote a 2-part story for the Washington Thoroughbred magazine that covered my ranking of the top 75 performances by a thoroughbred at a Washington track in the first 75 years of racing since the legalization of the sport in 1933. Trooper 7's second Long Acres mile victory in 1981 ranked number 1 on my list.
It was no surprise when Trooper 7 was in the inaugural class of the Washington Thoroughbred Hall of Fame. The Xarins turned down lucrative offers to syndicate Trooper at stud, but there would be no parting from the family.
He's done so much for us, and money just doesn't mean that much. Trooper is what means it to us. I mean, I couldn't even think about selling him for $1. I'd have to be on my deathbed, I think, before I'd ever need $1 that bad that I'd sell him.
He enjoyed a fine stud career, his matings in a barn built especially for him. Spring Trooper, Super 7, and Super Sis were among his best runners. Many of his sons and daughters carried the familiar Xarin black and white silks. Trooper 7 had his own barn and breeding shed and romped in the same paddock his entire life. He passed in 2000 at the age of 24.
When we had him buried in there, it broke my heart, because he was more like a friend to me. I never had a brother or sister, but I had a horse. So sometimes I say that my brother was a horse. We put a stone up for him, and then when my mother got sick with cancer, she died fairly quickly, 6 months. She wanted her ashes buried there.
Mrs. Xarin passed in 2009. Kim Xarin hosted a memorial service for her beloved father in the summer of 2014. Gary Bays attended along with a group of family friends, co-workers, and media. Mr. Xarin's request of spreading his ashes in Trooper's burial site was of course granted. Kim still resides at Whispering Firs.
I think my mom and dad right now would be very, very happy that, that we're, still talking about Trooper and, representing him and stuff. I'm glad that they still remember him and that they still, hold him high.